All right. Hey guys, the Neo spoilers are here. And I went through all the cards earlier today, and I want to talk about the cards that stood out for me and why I think that aren't either really good, pretty good, or have potential, or just anything that really stands out for me for them. But so let's go in alphabetical order. I don't have these sorted in any way other than the alphabetical order that I downloaded them. So yeah, let's all right. Anchor to Reality. Um, what I like about this one is the possibility of pairing it with something that creates a lot of gold tokens, like Old Gnawbone. Actually, that's a good time to talk about. I have a feeling that Old Gnawbone was already so good, and now they gave us a bunch of cards that interact with artifact supports. So I feel like we're going to get a lot of synergy with the gold tokens that Old Gnawbone creates. For example, this card, all you gotta do is bust a gold token. Well, hopefully it actually busts a gold token when you cast this, and then you get one of the artifact cards that are actually cards in your deck. So that's what the hope for it will be. AO the Dawn Sky. Um, this is interesting. If you control, so if you have another card in your deck that's a creature, that could be really cool to just move it into play. And yeah, so it has lifelink, defender, so there's a way for it to die relatively easily and recoup some life as that happens. So very interesting card. Assassin's Ink. Destroy an opposing Vanguard support, and if you can't destroy target opposing creature, pretty good for a common, being able to destroy either a Vanguard or a target opposing creature. And so if you cast an artifact or enchantment card, it gains 3 mana. So I don't think that artifact tokens will work for this, but if it does, then that's awesome. You pretty much just get a free kill spell or removal spell if that works that way, but we'll see. At Sushi the Blazing Sky. So this one creates gold tokens when it dies. It has Berserker and Trample. Discard your hand and draw 4 cards. Those cards gain X mana. X is the number of gold tokens you control. So, I mean, not that I think Gnawbone needs extra help to get your cards out on the board, but that's one way that Gnawbone will synergize with this card as well. All right. In white, destroy a random opposing support with artifact or enchantment subtype, and if you can't, destroy the first opposing creature without vigilance. And then you can create a samurai token as well. So this card has a lot of utility, and it's relatively cheap at 8 mana, so I think that's pretty cool. Biting Palm Ninja. Exile the first non-land card from your opponent's hand is really the reason I want to talk about it. When this creature enters the battlefield, it gains menace. You have it lose menace. So it's pretty guaranteed that it will exile a non-land card from your opponent's hand. So that's pretty rad. I just thought this was a decent little card, a 2/2 double striker for 12. But its ninjutsu is 5, so if another creature with a cost of 3 or with the power of 3 or less attacks, it gets this. It gives this card its ninjutsu level, so it takes 5 of those attacks to make this card come onto the battlefield. Kind of a weird mechanic, but I'll see if it's not as complicated as it sounds. Bludgeon Brawl. Okay, this is going to be one of the most disgusting cards in the upcoming set. At the beginning of your turn, artifact supports you control gain the equipment subtype until the beginning of your turn and activate 4 red. Your first creature gets the number of equipment cards you control, then create a gold token. So, yeah, obviously Gnawbone in your deck is going to make this thing ridiculous. Bone Horde. At the beginning of your turn, your first creature. So, this could be decent. Number of creature cards in all graveyards. There's ways of putting a lot of creatures in your graveyard, especially Ren and 7. So that's one to look out for. I don't know if it's that amazing, but it has some usefulness there. This is maybe my number 1 chase card in the whole set. Return all artifact and enchantment cards from the graveyard to the battlefield under your control. I mostly want this for Legacy Omni decks and all sorts of other things, but there's a lot of ways to get cards into your graveyard right now. A lot of things help with that, but in mono white, it's probably not going to be a very useful card. I mean, there's stuff like Teferi, who slows the Sunset Vanguard, Time Reversal, making you discard your whole hand. So, yeah, we'll have to see how well it does in Standard, but yeah, in Legacy, that's going to be a monster. Covert Technician, if it has haste, this first artifact card in your hand gains full mana. And I think there's a lot of easy ways to give this creature haste in a red and blue deck. So that should be pretty cool. It's a pretty decent little card. Discover the Impossible. Fetching spells. And if that card's base costs are 7 or less, it gains full mana. So I could see this being useful in maybe a wizard class loop deck. And Legacy to fetch a Rish card's expertise, stuff like that. If you need to fetch a kill spell, there's a lot of neat little uses for this card. So being able to pick a spell card from your library, and if it's a cheap enough spell card, giving it full mana, pretty good little trade-off. Don't sleep on this card. Coochie Silencer. What I'm really interested in is discarding the last creature card from your hand and also destroying either an opposing vanguard or an opposing creature. So there's ways of getting creatures from your graveyard not only back into your hand or onto the battlefield. So that is pretty cool. Pretty cheap little card that can do a decent amount of stuff. Eater of Virtue. Gains all the basic evergreens from creatures in your exile. So, yeah, I mean, just throw stuff out of your hand into the exile and you magically get those basic evergreens. So, you want to give something lifelink, just chuck it out of your hand. Yeah, give something haste, same thing. So, yeah, this is actually a colorless card. I thought it was blue at first, but even better. That's going to be fun. Create X Samurai tokens, give haste and menace until the end of turn. Then your opponent creates X -1 Samurai tokens. Because this card's stored mana, so not sure if there's anything more special about these Samurai tokens other than them just being like 1/1 like humans, or if they're going to have anything special to them, but that's pretty good for being able to create that many tokens. That's going to be a fun card to bust with stuff like Creepy Puppeteer, Tanazir, all the stuff that makes tokens cool. Okay, this is a support card land. Deal 4 damage to the first opposing creature with the greatest power. And when a creature legendary enters the battlefield under your control, if this card is in your hand, it gains 3 mana. So a lot of lands in the new set have similar effects. So yeah, they should be pretty interesting new lands. I like them. This is a really good card, Explosive Singularity. It's not that expensive, and what it does is really good. Opposing Vanguard support loses 10 shield, so that gives Vanguard destruction to red, which is already pretty cool. And if it can't, deal 10 damage to any opposing target. So yeah, I love cards that can give you double duty and don't have to sit dead in your hand. They can do a lot. I don't like to have too many situational cards. I like having things that can do something really beneficial on casting. Farewell. This is an interesting card too. When you so this is pretty much a new white board wipe, but super interesting. As when you match a support gem by swap, increases card's level by 1. So you only get 1 chance per turn to increase this card's level. It doesn't just like cascade and keep upping its level. But yeah, if you do, exile all creature cards at level 1. So I think you can just do that when you cast this card without even leveling it up. Exile all artifact cards. 3, exile all enchantment cards. And 4, exile all cards from graveyard. So that's a complete reset, which is really interesting. I've never seen them do something quite so, I don't know, resetting. So that will probably be a very annoying card to face, I'm guessing. Flame Discharge. It's pretty decent for a common. An opposing Vanguard support loses X shield. If it can't, deal 10x damage to any opposing target. So up to 10. That's pretty good. Deal 10 damage at a mana cost of 15. That's not bad for a common. And it's a stored mana, so don't have to charge it up all the way if you don't have to. And also, if you control a modified creature, X +2, so that's an extra little bit of damage. So, pretty nice for a common, especially. Godo, Bandit, Warlord. Love just putting stuff into your library onto the battlefield. So that's rad. Beginning of combat on your turn, your samurai creatures gain double strike until end of turn. So that's also pretty great too. I don't know if there are a lot of amazing samurai creatures yet, but those are a couple of really cool abilities. Goro. Activate 2 red creatures. What I like about this one is that creatures in your hand as well gain haste. So if you're able to cast them on the turn that you activate the gem, then they come out and are ready to go. if you control a modified creature, create a dragon token. I don't remember how to modify things. I gotta look at that mechanic again. But yeah, it's kind of a weak little creature on its own, but being able to give your other cards haste is pretty rad. When this creature enters the battlefield, destroy the first other creature each player controls. So that's pretty good for a common, I think. I can think of a lot of reasons to use this card. So I'm wondering if it will still trigger if you don't have another creature. I think it will still work that way. At the beginning of combat on your turn, return the first vehicle support from your graveyard to the board under your control. In that card gains enchanted. At the end of your turn, return this card to your hand. So I have to see how good these vehicle supports are. I don't remember any standing out too much for me, but still, I like pulling stuff out of the graveyard and putting it onto the battlefield. So that's a little interesting. I thought this was a decent common. If the first artifact in your graveyard doesn't have buried, it gains buried. And when you match only 3 gems, the first card with buried in your graveyard gains 3 mana for each samurai and warrior you control. So, if you're playing with a bunch of samurais and warriors, then you can get a lot of stuff with buried in your graveyard mana way quicker than a lot of other ways. So, yeah, there are a lot of cards that give your cards buried now. So, this will be fun to play with. Thinking of something with Harness Infinity and all that kind of stuff. What's that one? Lear, Disciple of the Drowned, gives your spells buried. So, yeah, there's a lot to do with this little card here. Surprised it's only a common, but I'm kind of glad. Igor the Still Wind. I like being able to fetch ninja cards and giving them half their mana. I think that's pretty good. And then target ninja you control gains unblockable, so to make sure you can actually get that damage going onto your opponent planeswalker. I thought this was kind of a neat little trade-off where cards in your hand cost 1 less and cards in your opponent's hand cost 1 more. That makes a little bit of a difference. You'd be surprised. So, and it's tricolor, so that's also really cool. It's got trample and flying. So, yeah, I like this one. I don't know how much I'll actually use it, but I think it's pretty neat. Ink Eyes. This one is really cool. I think that this is a really neat card. It's a rat ninja. This has got really cool artwork. But what I love about it is that you can choose what graveyard you're pulling cards from. So sometimes you don't necessarily want your opponent's creatures, but you want one of yours for sure. And as a little bonus, this creature gains Regenerate 3, which I don't know what you need that for. If it loses it by the time it can trigger again, right? I don't know. That's a weird addition to this card. But I love being able to target whichever graveyard and pulling stuff from it. Invoke Calamity. Pick 2 of the first 4 spell cards with cost 6 of less from your graveyard. Fetch those cards. Those cards gain full mana and outcast. So I have to look and see which cards cost 6 or less. And unfortunately, it's not from library, it's from graveyard, but there are some cards I can think of that can make this card useful. I'll have to play around with it and see. But yeah, I could see this being a decent card with Chandra Dress to kill. Invoke Despair. I love that it can do 3 different things in one card, even though it's slightly expensive, but untargeted removal with also destroying enchantments. So it's got untargeted creature removal, support removal, and vanguard removal in one card. And not to and to add more to it, you also get to draw a card, and your opponent can lose up to 6 life, and you can draw up to 3 cards if your opponent has all that stuff on the board. So, a really good card there. Invoke Justice. Pick one of the first 4 creature or support cards from the graveyard to play under your control, and your creature with the lowest power gets +1/+1. That's a really good. I mean, I've never seen them give you graveyard recursion in mono white like this. So that's rad. And you also get to pick one of the first 4 creature or support cards. Wow, this is a fantastic card. I didn't even really give it enough proper due when I first saw this card, even though it stood out. But yeah, putting this into a deck that mills your deck or mills your library, that's awesome. Invoke the Winds. Gain control of target opposing creature. We haven't had one of these cards in a while. And if you can't, gain control of an opposing artifact support. So yeah, steal stuff with blue again. When this creature enters, it's an artifact construct, and when it enters the battlefield, it gets +1/+1. And when it dies, this creature, your first creature, gets +X/+X. So it kind of reminds me of Spiteful Squad, but for any deck that wants it. So I could see this being cool if you buff it up and throw like Defender or something on it. So this has its uses. I'm always a fan of +X/+X. I thought this card is really interesting. When you match only 3 gems, gain an extra swap. Even though this effect can only trigger up to 1 time per turn, I think this card will be pretty useful. And it's a samurai, so that's pretty cool. You're going to see it in samurai decks, so yeah, this should be neat. Jin Gitaxia's Progress Tyrant. When you cast the first card during your turn, that card is a spell, copy it. That copy gains full mana. If that card is an artifact, reinforce that card. Yeah, I mean, what else do you need there? That's pretty rad. So, the only thing about it is, so if the card is a spell, copy it. If the card is an artifact, reinforce it. But that reinforce... Okay, never mind. I got it. When you cast it, reinforce it. Interesting. This is really cool. Deal X damage to target creature without flying. The X is the number of red gems on the board. So, I mean, that's already pretty awesome. You could really destroy your opponent creatures that way. And then channel 5, deal X damage to target creature without flying. X is the number of red gems on the board. Okay. But really, I mean, I kind of remember what channel it is, but not really. But what we really are interested in, at least I am, is the activate. Another one of these dragon spirits. Return the first creature without the dragon subtype from your graveyard to the battlefield. And if you can't, your opponent discards 2 cards and loses 2 life. So yeah, a couple of awesome abilities there. And it's got Berserker and Lifelink. So that's a pretty strong card just on that level. But yeah, being able to return creatures from the graveyard when it dies is really useful. And also discarding 2 cards is pretty good too. Kyrie the Swirling Sky. If your opponent controls more cards than you, return the first opposing creature in a random opposing support to its owner's hand. So, otherwise, destroy the top 4 cards of your library and then return the first 2 spells from the graveyard to your hand. Those cards gain half of their mana. So, there's a lot of fun stuff you can do with this card. And it's got Ward, drain 9 mana from your hand. So, yeah, there's a lot of really cool stuff about this card. I like it. Kappa Tech Wrecker. When this creature deals combat damage to your opponent's planeswalker, you may have it lose Death Touch. And if you do, destroy a random opposing non-Vanguard support. So, wow, you can just use this card to pretty much decimate your opponent's supports. And it's a common too. So just buff it up so that it's not such a weak little card otherwise, but really pretty powerful effect in a common. Okay, if you do need a modified creature, and modified creatures you control have trample, but moving the first land support from your library to play under your control, yeah, just get a bunch of free Erixmithis. But also, why not throw in the supports that throw in the lands that give your cards mana in their hand? Yeah, rad. This is an interesting card. When this creature enters the battlefield, return the first non-land card from your opponent's graveyard to their hand or to your hand. This card gains 3 mana. Then exile the first 2 cards from your opponent's hand. Then exile the first 2 cards from your opponent's graveyard. And at the beginning of your turn, you may drain 9 mana from your hand. If you do, return the first card from your opponent's exile to your hand and it gains full mana. That's a lot of stuff this card can do. Yeah, just being able to steal your opponent's cards and denying them the ability to use them too is even better. So, very cool. Cora the Boundless Sky. This one's got Death Touch and Reach, which is pretty cool already. It's got Flying as well, so that's nice. When this creature dies, if you don't control land support, fetch the first land support from your library. It gains full mana. So if you don't control land support already. Otherwise, create a green spirit token. Curious what that green spirit will be. But yeah, I think this is a pretty decent way of getting a land support on the battlefield if you need to. But I don't know, it's alright. Another dragon spirit. This one. When this creature enters the battlefield, target creature gains prevent damage. And when it dies, a random creature you control loses prevent damage. But this one doesn't have anything like Defender or Berserker. So it's a little bit harder to kill, which could be good or not. But activate 2. This creature gets +5/+5 until end of turn. So that's cool. You get to beef it up if possible. Or if you make that match. But yeah, this is like a little bit of a Rem Carless light. So this card, after thinking about it for a while, it's kind of doesn't make sense. Like, this card is just ridiculously broken. Like not in a, oh, this card is so OP it's broken. Like, this card should not be function. Or this card, if it's working as the text goes, should not be this way. Because when you cast an aura card, this card's level becomes X. X is equal to that card's cost. So, say you cast Cigar's Imprisonment, that this card's level becomes 9. Then pick one of the first aura enchantment cards with mana value equal or less than this card's level from your library. Fetch that card, gains full mana. So you can just keep fetching the same aura card as many times as you want, and it gains full mana. So you cast that card, then this card can just pick that same card and just continuously keep playing it for as long as it wants to. So they need to do something to fix that, or else it's gonna literally break the game. When a creature you control is buffed for the first time during your turn, increase this card's level by 1. And at the beginning of your turn, if you don't control a creature named Token Lion Set, your first creature gets +X/+X until end of turn, and X is equal to this card's level. So, I'm just trying to think, like, if there's a way to make this card continuously buff. But I think that would, as long as you have one other way to buff your creature. And then once that happens, every turn you'll get a buff from this card. But there are other ways to buff your creatures, I think, without having to rely on this card to do it for you. But there's something interesting there. I kind of want to play around with it. I think that there are some neat things you can do with it. Lizard Blades. Your first creature gains double strike if you don't have a controlled creature name token Lizard Blades. So, yeah, give me all the double strike. Destroy an artifact with mana cost of 9 or less. If you can't, destroy the first opposing creature, mana cost 9 or less, and gain 9 life. So, gaining 9 life is is not bad. That can help. Then, yeah, that's the only thing. I think there needs to be a opposing support. Well, actually, no. Other cards that have that gain life thing, they'll just cast if you need to gain life, or not even if you need to gain life. They'll just give you that 9 life. So I'm guessing that's how it's gonna work. So be wary of that. But it's an alright card. It's good to have, and it's a little bit of an insurance there. And if you need to gain some life, you can use it for that as well. March of Swirling Mist. When you exile a blue card from your hand, this card gains 3 mana. So that's kind of cool. Disable the first X opposing creatures for 2 turns. So that can really mess up your opponent's strategies. And all you really need to do is just have a lot of card draw so you can exile blue cards from your hand and cast this card for a relatively cheap mana cost, so that's a good card, I think. Okay, March of the Machines. At the beginning of your turn, your first creature gets +X. Already, I'm into it. X is the sum of the shields of all artifact supports you control. So, pair this with our buddy Old Gnawbone. And then, if you're using Kazmina, use her third ability, which buffs, or which gives every one of those gold tokens 7 shields, or 6 reinforcements. So, yeah, 7 shields. So, let me guess. Just do the math on that. Old Gnawbone, does he have 9 or 7? I forget. I think he's a 9/9 creature. So just with Gnawbone alone, you're going to get 63 buff on your first creature there. So that is crazy. Can't wait to break that. That will be fun. March of Wretched Sorrow. When you exile a black card from your hand. Okay, so each one of these, each one of our colors is going to get that, right? An opposing Vanguard support loses X shield. If you can't deal X damage to target opposing creature, then you gain X life. So there's a lot that you can make happen with this card. So you do have to exile cards from your hand to increase this card's level. So I don't love that, but it might get its uses. Nashi, Moon Sage's Cyan. This is one of my favorite new cards. When this creature deals combat damage to your opponent's planeswalker, if it has haste, fetch the first card from your opponent's library. That card gains full mana. So, there's a lot of easy ways to give give a creature haste. I mean, unfortunately not in mono black, but in mono, or in any of the boluses, Angrath, Tibalt, they all have access to red. So there you go. Okagachi Vengeful Kami. When this creature deals combat damage to your opponent's planeswalkers, if the opponent controls more cards than you, exile an opposing card at random. I'm guessing from their hand. Otherwise, opposing creature can't attack until the beginning of your next turn. So, wow. That's just a straight up shutdown card. And it's powerful. And it's all colors. So, you can cheat this guy out with any mocks. So, yeah, have fun with that. For a common, I thought this was alright. Convert 2 gems to green, and if this creature is modified, convert 4 gems to green instead. So that's pretty good for a common card. I mean, just on its own, at the beginning of your turn, converting 2 gems to green is alright. Another one of these color-specific land gem converters. Channel 4, return target creature to its owner's hand. If you can't, return an opposing Vanguard support to its owner's hand. If you can't do that, return an opposing artifact support or enchantment support. So, this gives a lot of bounce to really any creature or any deck that wants to use it, but obviously converting 2 gems to blue, you want somebody who gets a good blue mana bonus. So there you go. Ryu Storm's Edge. When you match only 3 gems, target samurai or warrior creature you control gains double strike until end of turn. So, I mean, that's a pretty conditional amount of stuff you need to go through to give your creatures double strike. and they have to be samurais or warriors. So, I mean, not an amazing card, but anything that gives other creatures double strike is something worth thinking about. When this card enters the battlefield, destroy the top 3 cards of target player's library. Activate 2, exile the first card from your opponent's graveyard. So the reason I like this card is it's colorless, and you can target whichever player's library you want. So that's rad. I like the versatility there, and that you can put it into really any deck that you want. And, it's 3/3 defender for 9 mana is not terrible if you look at the history of defender creatures in this game and where they put them at for their mana cost. Return to action. Oh, that was a really interesting, weird art too, aside from anything else. But I like that black is getting another lifelink spell in standard again. I kind of miss those. And it's also got prevent damage and unblockable. So I don't know why you need prevent damage until end of turn and unblockable. That's the only reason you would need prevent damage, is to not die when you smash into a card that blocks you. So whatever. I'm more interested in the lifelink than anything. Rasona at Asari Commander. This is kind of a weird card. It's a 3/3 with haste and vigilance. I like to have that it has haste and vigilance, but 3/3 is kind of weak. But when this creature deals combat damage to your opponent's planeswalker, this creature gains prevent damage and hexproof. And when an opposing creature deals combat damage to your planeswalker, this creature loses prevent damage and hexproof. So, I guess the easiest way to get around that is by having a flyer, or just killing the creature, or killing this guy, I mean. But that's an interesting thing happening there. Hexproof means that it'll be a little bit more difficult to kill. You're gonna just need to, hit, you're just gonna have to use either untargeted removal or a flying creature. Interesting. I like it. I'd like some way to buff it up if I'm gonna have it in my deck, but pretty cool. Roadside Reliquary. I really like this card. At the beginning of your turn, convert 2 gems to your planeswalker's color. That's really nice to have in a colorless uncommon. When the support is destroyed, draw a card, and if you control an artifact card, that card gains 3 mana. And if you control it... Oh, sorry. If you control an enchantment card, that card gains 3 mana. Satsuki the Living Lore. Activate 2. Read the next chapter of each saga support you control, which is already kind of interesting. One of the things about Binding of the Old Gods is once you use it as a kill spell, sometimes you want to use the next one in your hand, or you want to get to the next sagas really quickly so that you can use it as a kill a kill card, and not have to wait 2 more turns to be able to do that. And when this creature dies, return a saga support you control to your hand. If you can't, return the first enchantment card from your graveyard to your hand. So, cool ways of getting stuff back on the board if you need them. But yeah, pretty interesting. Oh yeah, I like this one even more than the other one. Secluded Courtyard. At the beginning of your turn, convert 2 gems to your Planeswalker's colors. If you have at least 3 different creatures that share a type in your library instead, convert 3 gems to your Planeswalker's color. So already I'm thinking using this with dragons in a mono red deck, or any mono color deck really. But yeah, especially mono red, I'm thinking you're gonna want this for the gem conversion, or black, or even blue if you really want. But yeah, I like this card a lot. Shingeki Jukai Visionary. Activate 2 green for fetch the first land support from your library. It gains full mana. Already sold. Channel 3. Return the first card from your graveyard to your hand. It gains X mana. X is this card's stored mana. Yeah, I keep forgetting what channel is, but I'm more interested in that activate ability. Okay, this card. Silent Blade Oni. When this creature deals combat damage to your opponent's planeswalker, create a copy of the first card from your opponent's hand in your hand, and that card gains full mana. Sold already, yet they still had to throw this part in. Then your opponent discards their first card. So not only do you get to use their card, they don't get to use it either. Wow. Just nuts. I can't wait to have that card. Another nice land card, but I'm curious what these Kamigawa colorless spirit tokens are. But they get haste until end of turn. Soul Transfer. Exile an opposing Vanguard support. If you can't, exile target opposing creature. Then, if you control a Vanguard and an enchantment, return the first creature or Vanguard support from your graveyard to your hand. So, this card has a lot of uses. At 8 mana, yeah, exiling a creature. So it's kind of like our new version of Final Death, but a lot of really just extra nice bonuses to being able to use this card. Spell Pierce. I like this card because it's pretty cheap, and it actually has a substantial amount of drain that you can do. And I'm wondering if this is because of the feedback that Octagon has gotten from us regarding mana drain spells, where they're either too expensive or they just don't drain enough mana to be really worth using. So I think this helps kind of right the ship on that. And yeah, kind of, if I'm correct, it means they're listening to the player feedback. Spinning Wheel Kick. I thought this card is really good, actually. Your first creature deals damage equal to its power to up to 2 target opposing creatures. So that's rad. You get to do this to not only the first opposing creature, but 2 of them. And then also, the opposing Vanguard support loses X shield and X is a power of your first creature. So, big fan of all these new double duty cards. If you don't control Saga support, your first creature gets +2/+2. Otherwise, read the next chapter. Random Saga support you control 2 times. Then enchantment creatures you control get +1/+1. So, my favorite part of this card is being able to read the next chapter of Random Saga support you control 2 times. So, this will pair well with Binding of the Old Gods. I really don't use any other sagas that I own very frequently. So that's really the reason I would be using it. Tameshi Reality Architect. When a support card is returned to your hand, draw a card. And this effect can trigger only once per turn. When you match a support's gem, if that card is a land card, you may return it to your hand. And if you do, return the first artifact or enchantment card from the graveyard to the battlefield under your control. So you're basically trading a land card for an artifact or enchantment. That might be cool. I'm just kind of curious about this card, how good it will actually be in practice. But there's something there. Tamiyo's Completion. This is interesting. I've never seen them do this. Disable opposing Vanguard support until the beginning of your next turn. I didn't even really know that was possible, but super interesting. Disable the first opposing creature until the beginning of your next turn. So that's good. I like that it's untargeted. If you need to deal with a pesky hexproof creature, such as a Gaia's Revenge, anything like that. Yeah, pretty cool. Tesseract Cruel Machinist. I think I only took this ability. But artifact cards in your hand gain full mana, and artifact creatures you control have base power and toughness of 5/5. So I think a lot of artifact creatures are tokens and or very weak. So I could see that being a useful thing, or you can give other creatures the artifact subtype, I believe, as well. But also being able to give your artifact cards full mana. That's pretty rad. I just thought this was kind of funny. Each player gains control of all their cards their own. Let me say that again. That's even confusing to say. Each player gains control of all cards they own. Well, yeah. If a player can't gain control of a card they own this way, return that card to its owner's hand. And if they can't, destroy that card. So I just thought that's a really confusingly worded card. But if anyone wants to explain that card to me, feel free. The Kami War. This is a really interesting saga. It's all colors. And what it does is exile an opposing Vanguard support. If you can't exile the first opposing creature, you can't exile the opposing non-land support. So save this one until you can actually do any of those effects there. And then return an opposing Vanguard support to its owner's hand. If you can't, return it. Yeah, so basically the same thing, except instead of exiling, you bounce them. And then it's got a third thing, but it creates a token, but I don't know what that token does from these previews. Untargeted removal in a support. Always happy about seeing that. And it's 2 chapters of the saga, so that's really nice. You'll have a way of just either discarding a card from their hand or destroying 2 of their creatures or 1 creature per turn for 2 turns. Pretty strong there. Oh yeah, so this Vanguard is pretty interesting in how they decide to design it. Exile the first opposing creature without Vigilance and Defender, and you gain 6 life, and create a Samurai token. But when your opponent matches the support's gem, activate one of this card's abilities at random. So this will be really good to use against a opponent planeswalker that has white, because they'll be tempted to match this support's gem. So every time they do that, they'll be wiping themselves. So pretty interesting. I don't know. It's going to be very situational, but I feel like there's something useful there in this card. Toshiro Umizawa. At the beginning of each combat, this creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Not amazing. Because it's only a 2/2, and it has Berserker and Reach. And when an opposing creature dies, pick one of the first 2 spell cards from your graveyard, fetch that card, gains full mana and enchanted. When you cast this card, exile it. Okay, so my idea there is just giving this creature prevent damage, either with Rem Carlos or one of the other things that give your creatures prevent damage. But yeah, interesting. I could see this being a really useful card. And is this the last card? Okay, I'm getting close to the end here. When this support enters the board, exile target opposing creature. If you can't, exile an opposing artifact support. And when this support is destroyed, return the last card from your opponent's exile into a hand. The only thing I don't like about this card is that secondary effect. It's why I like Circle of Confinement. You just target a creature, and if that support gets destroyed, there's really no consequence. This is more like what was that card? Gosh, it's from, I think, what's it called? But you know what I'm talking about. It has the same effect as this card, just minus the channel. It's from, I think, Theros Beyond Death. It was always Jeet. When your first creature deals combat damage to your opponent's planeswalker, the support gains 1 shield, and when the support loses shield for the first time on your turn, your first creature gets +2/+2. Okay, so either of these can happen. Your first creature gets +2/+2. Target creature gets -1/-1, or you gain 6 life. So, I don't know. It's a decent effect, but for a masterpiece, not that impressed with it. I do like that it's colorless, at least. Unforgiving One. When this creature attacks, you may return the first creature with base cost X or lower from your graveyard to your control. X is 2 times the number of modified creatures you control, including their reinforcement. So I like that part of it. You're not so capped off with the effect, but I mean, it will take a lot for this to actually be really effective. But I do like whenever this creature attacks, it's not like when it dies. You can do this once a turn, basically. So, yeah, I gotta look and see what kind of modified creatures we can do, but there's something there. Walking Skyscraper. At the beginning of your turn, reduce this card's cost by X until end of turn. X is the number modified you control. It loses hexproof until beginning of your next turn. I don't love that, and it's kind of an expensive creature, but I do like that it's a hexproof with trample, and it's 8/8 isn't bad. You can reinforce it with stuff like double major if you really want to as well. But yeah, reducing the cost of it is also nice. I wish that it was a vehicle, not just an artifact construct. That way you can get Sahili on that thing. Artifact equipment spider. I just thought it was alright because it gives your first creature +1/+4 in reach. It's like having a permanent mantle of webs. And when we were young, I think this is the last card I got here. Up to your first 2 creatures get +2/+2 until end of turn, and if you control an artifact and an enchantment, those creatures gain lifelink until end of turn. So you can potentially give 2 creatures of yours lifelink, and it's only till end of turn, but still. For 6 mana, I mean, there are some hoops you have to jump through, but it's an okay card. It might see some use. It probably won't for me personally, but I like the idea of it. All right. Well, wow, we just clocked in at a full hour here, so hope that gives you some ideas for what you might want to do when you get these cards, and maybe there's some things that I missed, and feel free to let me know about any of that. So, all right, till next time, and looking forward to having fun with these cards, and I hope you are too.